Thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry it's a bit warm in here, and I hope not everyone didn't have too many glasses of wine or too many nice desserts. So this is the session Developer Console and Workbench, getting under the hood of your org. So I'm Louise Lockie. As you can probably tell, I'm from England. I work at a company called Wilmington there, and I'm their head of CRM and solution architect. I do some other stuff. I co-lead the London Women in Tech community group. I co-host the EMEA MVP office hours, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a monthly call that some of the MVPs based in EMEA hold and basically have a phone line open. And we normally have something to talk about if no one's got any direct questions, but the idea is we're there to troubleshoot and help people with particular issues they might have. So really looking at solo admins or people working on a project and want to get some advice from some not experts, just peers, people that might have been in that same position or could even point you in the right direction. So look that up online if that sounds of interest. And this year I've joined the organising committee of London's Calling, which is this in London, which this coming year is going to be on the 8th of March. As we all are, I'm on Twitter and online. I've got my 6 certifications, which that used to make me really proud, and now I kick myself at not pushing myself for more, so I need to hold myself to be accountable and get some more. But then I'm also a Salesforce MVP, and that's something I'm very proud of as well. Thanks, Jim. So, getting under the hood of our org. And you might say, well, why do I need to do that? I'm quite happy living behind the setup menu. I can access everything I need to do my job as an admin. But what I want to do today is show you, perhaps just a taste in the time we've got, of the tools that are available to us, that the different ways we can get at accessing our org, the setup of it and the data of it. And who doesn't like options? And I think that I attended a session earlier about DX, and I look at tools like that and I say there's more and more tools coming out there to help us do our job differently. And they might all help us do the same thing, but we're not all the same. Some of us will be happy living in different environments, and we can only do that once we know what's available to us. So what I want to do today is just talk through 2 of those, Workbench and Developer Console, and talk through just a handful of use cases that I've found have been useful to me and that might give you a lead into using those tools, that then as you progress in your career or do different things, you've got more tools in your toolbox, you've got more ammunition, you've got more places to go. So hopefully that's what we'll do today. So I'm going to start with the tool that doesn't have the word developer in its name. Because sometimes we see things like, oh, I'm not a developer, that's not for me. Workbench does have it in the URL though, so it is still termed a developer tool, but I'm here to hopefully show you that they're very useful for admins as well. So you can see here, this is some text that the team or the gentleman that built Workbench has said. So Workbench is designed to be an application administrators and developers can use to quickly, and I think that's key for Workbench for me, view their organisation's data and metadata, test and troubleshoot their own applications, be a one-stop shop for interacting with the various fulls.com APIs. Now, both these tools do a lot more than I'm going to talk about today, but I'm going to just give you a taster so that you can then start exploring. So as I mentioned, Workbench was developed by someone who worked and works for Salesforce. So he built the tool, but it's not a Salesforce tool. It's using the application, it's using the code, it's open source, but he has put it out there. So you can't, if you've got a problem with it, you can't ring up your support rep, you can't log a case. It's not supported in that way, but it is supported by the community. It's supported by him, who still works at Salesforce, and it's supported by, say, the Stack Exchange, and there's a wiki on it as well. And I don't know if you've seen, but there are trailheads that mention it. So though it's not an official Salesforce product or endorsed by them officially, it is commonly talked about and actually in Trailhead. You know, and if it's in Trailhead, it must be good. So how and where? So as you can see here, the URL, nice and easy. All you need to do is click on the I agree, and then you log in with your Salesforce details. So it's using OAuth. And you saw there on that first screen, that I can probably hit again, or maybe not, that you can choose whether you go into your production org, a sandbox, you can go into a Trailhead playground, you can go into a dev org, and obviously I'd very strongly recommend that you do that first of all, because these tools are powerful. To get into Workbench, you simply need API enabled, that permission. But bear in mind that, as you've just seen, you log in as yourself using your Salesforce credentials. And so therefore, you have to have the permission in your Salesforce org to do the things you're looking to do in Workbench. But you also saw it was right there in the browser. So you just can click on it and run it really nice and simple. So, use cases. As I say, I'm not going to talk about everything it can do today, but I've grouped the things that I find are a good stepping stone into the tool into these 4 terms. Find, query, explore, and manipulate. So I'm going to talk about those. So, starting off, oh, I went back on, there we go, that's wrong, that's better. So starting off with find. So you can find the meta types and components of your org. Now, a use case for this might be you want to look at all the workflow rules you've got in your org. And you know, that list has grown. That's not the list it was 5 years ago. That list is very long now. And so you could go into the setup menu, find workflows, and just find a long list of them. Tab across a few times, sort by object, get all the account workflow rules you've got in one list. And then you want to look at all the ones you've got for contracts, you go there. But that's quite long-winded, and that's going to take you a bit longer to do. And that's what I'm talking about with these tools, that they will give you different ways of doing the same thing. There are some things they do uniquely, but it's different ways as well. So let me just show you this here. There we go, it's working. So you go to meta types and components, which describes the components in your org. Now you can see here we've got a long list of the different types of meta types we've got in the data in our org. We go to workflow, and you can see 35 objects in this Salesforce instance have got workflows attached to them. From those workflows, you can click into them, you can see when they were created, what their ID is, whether they're part of a managed package or not, and you can see that in a list. Now, to do that in the setup menu, I'd be creating list views upon list views, or I'll be tabbing back and forth. Yes, it's fine if you've got half a dozen, but times that by 10, it's quite different. So that's a really easy way of using Workbench. You saw how quickly it was to log in, and you can explore. And just doing that, you're not going to break anything. There's no harm going to come from doing that. So similarly, you can explore the relationships you've got between your different objects. So again, this is another part of the menu that I'll show you in a second. And you can use this to see which relationships, what is the relationship between the orgs, what child relationships an org has to another. You can find IDs. How many times have you been doing some data loading and you need to find a record type ID, and you've got to go left, right and centre and then copy it from that bit in the browser that's even harder now in Lightning than it was in Classic. In Workbench you can find it in seconds. So let's have a look at my screen clicks of this. So we've gone to the same place, standard objects, standard and custom objects. There we go. So we've got a long list of, as we just said, the standard and custom objects. So let's look at asset. So we can see it's got 37 child relationships. Let's look at its attributes. It's not a custom table. What is the prefix for it if you're going directly into the browser? Is it searchable? Is it queryable? you can see all of this straight here. So imagine if you inherited an org or you were working with a new org. This is a great way to dig straight in and see everything you need to see. So then you've got all the child relationships. You can look at the details behind those. You've then also got the record types and the fields. And if you have a look at the fields, so we can see we've got 135 fields on this object. And we can see from the legend over on the other side, which of those are custom, which of them are systems, which of them are true or false fields. So it's a really great way to just dig in and see it in a different way till you can see it in your setup menu. And there we go, there's the record type ID. Very easy to find. So that's that whole list. So I could spend hours just like digging in and, what's that doing? I've forgotten about that. It's really handy way to access that data. My next one is manipulate. So I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of my time using Data Loader. There's always something that needs to be updated, manipulated, loaded. Someone's always found some spreadsheet somewhere, particularly with when we had GDPR coming. Like the amount of spreadsheets that were just dropped on my desk was unbelievable. It's like, oh, we found this data, do something with it, match it. Let's just check, are we allowed to do anything with it? And so, I love Data Loader. I can spend all the time in the world in it. But this will do all of the you can do in Data Loader, but with some hidden extras, or not hidden, I'm about to reveal them. So you can undelete. That's handy. You can load without having an ID in your CSV file. So again, I bet we've all been in the position where someone's run a report in Salesforce, they've downloaded it into an Excel spreadsheet, they've spent hours matching or doing some work, all without talking to you, and then they deliver it back, and you go, I can't do anything with that, there's no ID. Can you just upload this data? I just need to replace the old values with the new ones. Upload it, please. There's no ID in there. What can I do? Data Loader's not going to work with that. Well, in Workbench, you can do the exact same thing, upload this CSV file, do matching, but you don't need, there's certain other fields you can match. So if you can, if they can identify it, then you can match it that way. So that can be really handy. That could be a time saver at times. Not any field, there are a list of certain fields. So if you have a look at like the wiki or something, it will list those fields. So no, it's certainly not just an external ID, but it's not any old field. But there's quite a few that you can do that with. And you can see here that you can just use it to just update or insert or delete a single file as well. So if you just, you're in Workbench, you're poodling along, you want to add a new account, you can do it here just as well as doing it in your org. Again, it's horses for courses. What does everyone prefer doing? But it's good, I feel, to know the options. So obviously purge is a hard delete, so it bypasses your recycle bin. So dangerous, but again, sometimes needs must, and that's what we're doing. There is a limit, I think it's 10,000 on this, so you can't do the millions that you can do via Data Loader or Data Loader IO or things like that. But again, it's a great alternative, and sometimes it could help you rescue something that you thought was about to be a disaster. The other thing that I like about this as opposed to Data Loader is if I'm on the go, I'm on the move somewhere, this is all in the browser, so I haven't downloaded anything. So of course, Data Loader you need to download, and you need to make sure you've got the most recent version. You should check you've got the most recent version of it. Okay, and then my favourite part of it, and this is where I sort of get a bit geeky, that I find just jumping into Workbench, if I just want to find out some quick stats about my org, I've got someone over my shoulder saying, how many contacts have we got legitimate interest? Who can we mail? How many? But then I want to also filter that on where are they based or anything like that on the fly. To jump into Workbench and write a query like that, even for someone with no SQL skills or anything like that, you don't need that at all. I find so much quicker than actually opening my UI, getting a report up, and then finding which report type I want and writing the report that way. So I've got a couple of use cases for that for different ways that you can use it, and there's a few cool things you can do that I think you can't do in the normal UI using the normal report builder. But I just find it so super quick to jump in and just quickly write queries like that to give stats when someone, as I say, is over my shoulder asking for it. So let's click on this one. So we go into the SOQL query, and you can see here you pick an object. So what I'm picking here is a count. So really straightforward. I'm just going to literally count the number of accounts in this org. So you can see there's 120,000. But just as easily, I'm going to say, okay, just show me the ones that have got the account statuses of open, 118,000. Just as easily, how many aren't open? Yes, I could have done the maths, obviously, but how quick was that? So this is completely real time. That was me logging in, just saying, count all my accounts. Now that's straightforward, and I'm sure you do that in seconds in the report builder. But that was truly seconds. So you see the idea. This is what the screen looks like. You can pick the object. I've just got a count here, so there's no actual data coming out. But you can, if you don't count it and you just say, give me all the accounts that have the status not equals to open, then you're going to get a list of those accounts there. And what you can do is you can sort. You can limit the number of records you've got. You can filter, and you see the plus next to the filter. You can keep filtering, and so you don't need to be able to write SOQL queries off the bat. You can use those tools to do it, and then at the end you will have a list of results. And from that list of results, you can emit there and then, and I'll show you in a second. You can update. You can delete that record. You can click and just open another window and see that same record in your Salesforce org. So it really does give you the tools to really work with your data there and then. So you're querying, you're getting your stats, you're getting the numbers you want, but then you've got actionable file at the end. So you can see here, you can have a bulk CSV, and then you just download that, and you've got that file to manipulate and then use the update feature to be able to update it. So you've got both those functionalities in one go. So here is another example of how I find it useful. So what I'm going to do here is going to just quickly see how many of my users are either frozen or locked out. Now, that's not super easy to do in the org, in the normal report builder, or you'd probably have to do a list view on your user table, behind the setup. So let's look at how easy that is here. So I'm picking user login, and then I'm bringing in the ID, and then I'm going to filter on is frozen, true, is password locked, true. I'm going to bring those fields in so I can see which of them it is, and then I'm just going to do a switch because I've got an AND there, so I want an OR. And that brings out my results, and I've got those IDs. So you can see here I can update, I can delete, I can undelete, purge, and I can just click there and open it up in Salesforce. Now, obviously, that list would be a bit more user-friendly if it had names in it, and I would do that, except for, I don't want to name and shame my colleagues. So you can see how easy that was to do. And all of this is, I'm not doing it now, as you can see, no hands, but I did do it and screened and captured my screen there. So that's how easy that is to do. And I don't see that being that quick to do that in Salesforce otherwise. So other use cases that, don't worry, I'm not just going to make you watch me at my screen clicks, that you can do in Workbench is you can write a report on all reports in all folders, including other people's private folders, which again isn't accessible to you unless you log in as them in the org. That in this instance haven't been run in the last 365 days. So not only have no one's run them in a year, but they're in a private folder, or they might be in a private folder. Now that's super useful because, that all takes its toll on your system, and also, they might be reports that someone else will benefit from, that colleagues you might be able to do an audit and get those records out, because some of those users might no longer be active. So no one's got access to them at all. So you can run that here. So I've just highlighted where it's got scope all private, And that's the kind of thing you can read on the wiki about the different options you've got. And so each object here that you can filter on, that you can report on, has a scope as well. So there'll be things like on opportunities, you can say my opportunities, my team's opportunities, all opportunities. But with reports, you can say all private. So you add that in, so you can see there I've got select name, folder name, format ID, last run date from the report table with scope all private, where the last run date is more than a year. So that's showing me those results. You can see you get the results at the bottom that, just like before, you can go straight into that or delete it from there. If you've got a list of all the users who are inactive and you've got their reports in their folder, you go through and delete them all. That's a nice bit of tidying up. The other thing I've highlighted on the top right, yes, for you top right, is the deleted and archived records. So just by switching that from exclude to include, you can make sure you're reporting on things that have been deleted. So that's quite handy, full stop. But if you get a frantic call from someone saying, my dashboard's been deleted, and that's a dashboard that half the company have got access to, so it could be in anyone's recycle bin, and they don't know when it was deleted, was it even in the last 15 days, then you can filter that in there, but then bring in the other field of is deleted. So on most of our tables, we have our objects, we have is deleted as a field. Bring that in, and then you can see who deleted it, and then you can either undelete it, just using the right mouse click and undelete, or you can go to that person and say, you deleted it, let's find it out of your recycle bin. Probably both, name and shame, and reprimand, but at the same time get it out while you're there. The other really handy tool in here is doing things like on email templates, number of times used, some really good stats. So, it's just, if you can think of a few use cases of information you might like to find out about your org, or you've been asked before and you thought, that's a bit of a pain, then have a go. Open it up in a sandbox or a dev environment first, if you like, or just have a look around, and I'm sure you'll find use cases, because just querying the data, you can't go wrong. You can't do any harm by querying data. And the other part of querying you can do is using the search language, so SOSL. So that basically, you can do that in a query in Workbench that's just like using the top of your universal search in Salesforce. So one thing I do is I put the word test in and just let it find where I've got the word test anywhere in my org, because I don't want my users to be adding in test data or dummy data. And so that gives me a good opportunity, right? Okay, why have we got the word test in my accounts or anything like that? But I'm sure you can think of better use cases, but it's there as another option. Okay, one final thing for password management is final thing for Workbench is password management. Now, this isn't great from a security standpoint, but Workbench does let us set our users' passwords. Now, I always say to my users, use the forgot password button, or I can reset it for you. You get a link, but sometimes they just don't do that, do they? It doesn't work. For some reason, they say they don't get the email. Here, you can set their password. So it's just under the utilities menu, and you can see how easy. You put their ID in, you put the password you want to give them in twice, and set it. I would say caution. It's not great for us to know our users' passwords, so that's not, and you don't want them all to be set for password 01. But a good use case for this is if you're about to hold training in a sandbox and you don't want to spend the first 10 minutes going over everyone getting their password and going to their email. And so you could set everyone's password in the sandbox for the training session. That's a bit of a time saver. Okay, very quick interval. So developer console. I'm going to talk shortly on this because a lot of what I've said for Workbench relates to developer console as well. So the differences are, it is supported by Salesforce. It's part of it, you get to it, I'll show you in a second, from the same place you get to the setup menu. It is an IDE that is supported by Salesforce. You can write the SQL query, the SQL queries, as we just talked about, in there as well. But you can also test your code coverage, which I think is quite handy. We might not be deploying that code, or we might be working on that code. We want to find out what our current code coverage stat is. And we can use it to analyse our logs and see where we're having errors. I'm going to talk very quickly about that. So Developer Console, you essentially need to be an admin to get into Developer Console, but there's different permissions needed to use different aspects of it. But you can look that up, and you'll know whether you've got it or not, because whether it's available. And this is where it is. In Lightning, it's just here under the cog, so under Setup, Developer Console, and it opens up a new window for you. And I recommend you have your Salesforce org on one screen, and if you've got two, your Developer Console on the other. If you're on Classic, it's just under your name, as I say, the same as Setup. And this is what it looks like. It's a blank slate. It's a window into a new Salesforce world. So just like with Workbench, I'm going to talk briefly about 4 things: test, query, troubleshoot, and edit. So, sorry about that. Looking at the troubleshooting. So this is where I'm talking about getting your Salesforce org on one screen and Workbench on the other, because this is what will pop up as you do things. So you go into Salesforce, open up an account, make a change, and press save, and have a look at your Developer Console on the other screen. It will start tracking what you've done. Now, that might just be interesting. I recommend you do it. There's no harm in doing that whatsoever. But then what you can do is get to a screen like this to start working out, where did my error happen? What was it, a validation rule that didn't work, or was it a data update, or was it did it hit a limit? You can better troubleshoot what's happening here. Now, this is at least a half an hour session on its own. And a fellow MVP from London, Francis Pindar, he has done a session on Developer Console about troubleshooting and the logs that he's done at Dreamforce a couple of times, and he's certainly delivered in London for us a couple of times. I recommend you look that up, because that's a whole session pretty much on this screen. So know it's there, open it up and see. Yeah, we haven't got time to go into the details of that today. So, just like I showed you in Workbench, which is my preferred place to do it, you can do the same in Developer Console. So, what I said earlier about having different options, I recommend everyone try both and see what suits them best. So you can, in the query editor down here, you can write the stock call queries that you saw my screen share do earlier. And this is a bit different. It's the getting the code coverage from your org. So obviously this isn't like a real or anything. 2%, that way I wouldn't be doing anything with that org, would I? But here, just in the Developer Console, you can run tests, and you can just set it going and run all your tests and get your code coverage, or you can run a test on individual Apex classes. Now, we might not be writing those classes, but we need to make sure that they're not going to hit any limits. So just, there we go, quickly on there, test, new run, pick the test we're not going to do run all, pick the test you want to run, and you'll get the results from that. So again, I recommend looking at that. Don't do that in your production org while you've got your users and suddenly run all your tests going at once, because that might have some impact on the performance of the org. But do it in a dev environment, and just I think it's a good thing to start finding out about and just branching out into that side of the world. And then the last thing on my for Dev Console was looking at the source code. So being able to actually look at what's in this class. What does this Lightning component look like? What does this Visual Force page look like? And this is where would do something like that. The Dev Console is one of the IDEs that you can look at. And as I say, do it in a sandbox, do it in a dev environment, get your feet wet, explore, and then as time goes on, it will start making more sense and you'll be able to do more with it. So whistle-stop tour of the systems, because I have run over, I'm afraid. So probably not time for Q&A now, I'm guessing. But find me later on if you'd like to, and then we'll post the slides somewhere else. What I hope I've done is just show you that there are other tools out there that help us do our jobs in a different way. Not necessarily better, but I think that as what we're trying to do and achieve gets more complex, then that having the different options will just make us a bit more effective and make us feel a bit more in control. So thank you.